Ain't no telephone bills.
What's good, Enigmites? And you thought that I was the coolest thing to ever come out of Tennessee? Well, you're wrong. I actually went out and found somebody that's slightly above me in the cool factor, and that's saying something because I'm the coolest person I know. Anyways, but anyhow, we're in for a treat tonight. I've went out, made besties with my boy Harley Owens, Bigfoot researcher extraordinaire, coming out of Tennessee, East Tennessee. We don't deal with them West, y'all basically Arkansas, East Arkansas, Memphis boys down there, but a couple East Tennessee boys. Harley, how you doing, man? Thank you for coming on my show, brother.
I'm doing extremely well. It's glad to be here, Joe. I want to thank everybody that's going to tune in and watch this, and you're in for a real treat tonight. So it's going to be a roller coaster ride for, if you don't, I'm sure some of your followers don't know me, so this is their chance to get to know me and hear about some of my experiences and my encounter in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park.
And your experiences, man. I will say, man, they're awesome. In fact, before you run off tonight, I'm actually going to connect you with some information. I'm going to connect you with some Bigfoot researchers out of northern New Jersey that I want you to get up with, but we'll do that after the show. Anyways, they're really good guys, man. Yeah. They're good guys. So Harley, before we get into the fun stuff, man, I got to do the boring. Hey, Harley, where are you from? How you doing? So Harley, tell us a little bit about yourself, man. Tell us where you're from, all that good stuff, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm 24 years old, married to my lovely wife, Gabrielle. We have 3 kids, Colton, Ivy, and Iris. I was born and raised in Jacksboro, Tennessee. It's about 30 miles north of Knoxville, right before you get into Kentucky. You go up I-75 and you see the big green dragon on the side of the interstate. That's where I'm from. So that's the best way I can simplify it. You go up 75 and you see the big green dragon. That's where I'm from. So, you know, I live in Newport now. I've lived here a little over a year. 2 years will be in March or April. So, you know, if anybody would have told me that I was going to start researching Bigfoot 3 years ago after my first experience, you know, I would have told them they were crazy. But, you know, sure enough, here I am, 3 years after my first initial encounter. And it's just been nothing but a roller coaster ride, and just getting out and enjoying the beautiful Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and you know, getting sometimes a little too close for comfort with these things. Not, you know, I mean, I've learned to accept that there is worse things out there than Bigfoot. Bigfoot would just assume to just watch you and leave you alone. You know, they want to do their own thing. It's the other things out here in these mountains that, quite frankly, I don't care too much for.
Yeah, no, it's real quick. I'm going to add some context to that. It is so Eastern Tennessee how you described where you live, because almost everybody I knew growing up described what truck stop they lived off. Go past that truck stop and you'll come right down through here, right? So you go through this way. So yeah, it was hilarious. I totally get what you're talking about on that, man. But yeah, so no. You got some awesome stories, man, and I'm really glad I got you, man. In fact, man, I feel like I've caught you at the pinnacle of your like you've got street cred now, man, like legitimate like street cred, like for real. And I got some time in those Smoky Mountains up there, that Grandfather Mountain and the place up in that way, and I know exactly some of the stuff that you were talking about. I've talked to several people. You know, I have friends all over the world, man. I've had people calling the show from New Zealand, Australia, the UK. And they're like, man, what's up with those Appalachian Mountains? I'm like, man, well, I don't know where you want to start, bro. So, yeah, man, I'm glad I got you on here, man. So everybody, Harley is, I like to eat the dessert before we get into it. Harley recently, so we're going to work in reverse, brother. All right. We're going to start with your most recent, and I want to back you up on this because it's just so amazing. Harley recently just had a major, I would say that it would probably be like one of the holy grails for all Bigfoot researchers. Harley, run it down for us, brother, and show everybody what you got there.
So October 23rd, third Saturday of October here, the biggest rivalry for Tennessee, the Alabama Crimson Tide. Well, I did not watch the game. I was out researching, because quite frankly, I thought we were going to get beat. I'm glad we won. Just going to say go balls. But so my buddies Rick and Steven, they came down. They're from Virginia, about 5.5, 6 hours away from me. We went out and we're hitting the trail, and we get up next to the creek because after Helene had hit, I hadn't went up past where I normally go because I knew the creek had tore some stuff up. I was sure of it, but I didn't go up that far. And we were down there walking around looking, and it was just like a completely new place. Like the creek was all washed out. The banks were washed out, sandy and gravel everywhere. And we get to looking around, and there's a real soft, like real small pieces of gravel. And there was a small footprint, like a baby footprint, like 8 inches long, 4 inches across at the toes, and almost 3 inches at the heel. So this was like a baby Bigfoot because it had a mid-tarsal break. When this thing stepped, you could see where the arch in its foot was. Yep. So, I mean, we could have tried to cast it, but there was no definitive toes, but you could plain as day see the mid-tarsal break. I was sitting there looking at that. I was just fascinated by that. I was like, this is a baby.
Right.
So, I mean, that just shows that this area is either a nesting site for them or they're raising their young here. It could be anything, honestly. But my buddy Rick hollered at me. He said, Harley, come and look at this. And I was like, what is it? He said, this. And I walked over. I seen it initially right away. My jaw dropped. I was like, holy cow. Because where this thing stepped, it was kind of on an incline. And I honestly didn't think it was going to come out. But from where this thing had stepped, it kind of slid a little bit down the hill, and that's why it looks kind of funky on one side. From it stepped and it slid on that incline, and I was just blown away. It's 15 inches long, 8 inches across at the toes, and almost 5 inches at the heel. But this track, I mean, it's unbelievable. Now it's not like most other tracks that you see out of a Bigfoot because the heel is kind of thin, and like their feet are a lot different than ours. Sometimes they're thin and sometimes they're wide, but I'll just show and explain what I'm talking about. But this is it right here. So what I'm talking about, try to get this up here so you can see.
Don't drop it, man. I feel terrible.
Normally their feet comes down through here, but this one has a thinner heel, but it gets wider. But you can see the toe splays on this thing. Like the toes are just splayed out. It's just not something really like what our toes can do. I'll see if I can show it. Right here in below where my chin is, you can see where that mid-tarsal break is. See that little dip right there?
Yes.
That's where a foot can bend up and down. Our feet can't do that.
Yeah.
So it was just a real clear indication that this is a Bigfoot. I knew there wasn't nobody out there running around with a 15-inch track unless it was a feral person, because those feral people are out here. Actually, speaking of feral people, back in July, my stepdaughter's dad had seen one. He was fishing along the creek that runs through my research area, but he wasn't in my research area. He was just further on down from it. And he said he had a feeling he's being watched. Right. And he said that he turned around and looked, and he seen a person that was behind a tree to hide. And he moved further down the creek away from it because he didn't know if this was like a person on drugs or what.
Right.
So he moved on. He moved further down the creek away from this thing. And he was standing there, start fishing again, and he had the feeling he was being watched again. He turned around, and it was right there 20 feet away from him. And it had one of its hands behind its back. And all of a sudden, it threw down a big rock that it had, and it took off and ran away. And he said he ran away too. Like I was the first person that he told. He's like, dude, I seen a feral person, and I could tell in his eyes that he legitimately seen one. And he was telling me, which I've been trying to find the person that has this video. There's somebody from right down the road to where my research area is that apparently has a video of a feral person.
So it's funny. It's not to interrupt you, man, but it's funny you bring up those feral people, man, because I actually I've talked several times in my videos, man, about like the Appalachians and like the amount of fiduciary that goes on up in there. My mother said something to me about a week ago, man, a week and a half ago. She lives in Carter County, man, right on the edge, man, where that came down and got. Well, I know. Thank God you're alive too. I know that you had to evacuate as well when that flood came down, right? So several rivers swelled up and hit areas right around my mother, but she didn't have to move. My family, they had to stay there, but the Blackhawks and the Chinhooks were landing in fields near them and were flying up and down, right? She said something to me, man, that made me, that hit me for a second. Was she literally said, those floods washed out those caves. Who knows what's crawling in these mountains now? That's literally what she said, man. Those floods, because those waters came down. Yeah, she said, who knows what's crawling loose in these mountains right now, right? So watch your dogs and stuff like that.
I mean, it makes you wonder, if these things, I'm sure that they do live in caves and they take advantage of it. They've essentially lost their homes.
Yeah.
I'm sure they go back, but they're probably ticked off and hungry.
Yeah.
They're going to be looking for food.
Yeah.
And that's something that I have a lot of asking me, are they more aggressive or what? And I'm just like, well, not that I've noticed. So, I mean, across the wrong one, essentially, yeah, that's probably what's going to happen. But me personally, you hear all these encounters of people being attacked, and I don't know about Bigfoot, but I'm sure it happens. But from what I've noticed, they're pretty docile.
Yeah, so there's also a very specific type of Bigfoot that's in East Tennessee, especially in those Smoky Mountains. I don't know if you've ever heard about it. If you're not, you should look into it. It's called the Tennessee Wild Man. Have you ever heard about this?
Yeah. I've heard about the Tennessee Wild Man, and I also call it the Sukaloo.
Yeah, and so I've spoken to several different people about opinions on what they think these Bigfoots are, but I've also done a lot of research or covering stories from Native Americans and other places. And the Seraphim Long story, I've talked about this all the time on the channel. And I just also did another one. My last episode we were talking about Portlock, Alaska, which, they have a very aggressive type of Bigfoot up there. And they were telling me that those type of Bigfoots and that they have their own personalities and they actually can speak our languages, right? So like, it's hit or miss on sometimes the ones you get, sometimes the one that you don't get. Some of them will avoid you. Some of them will just watch you. Some of them will throw rocks at you if you get a little close. And then some of them will like come down at your campsite and yank your tent up and swing you around and throw you to try to get you to leave or whatever. But yeah, man. So man, that's a great find, bro. It really is. And you know what? And so I always like to overthink stuff. Those floods that rolled down there. I mean, they could have just been on the move, you know what I mean? And then, like, you just, came across a good one.
I found on October 5th, it was a week after Helene had hit and out there, and I found a 20-inch track.
Mm-hmm.
October 5th, I found a 20-inch track. It was 12 inches across at the toes and 8 inches at the heel. That track was huge.
Right.
And by the time that I had got back to try and cast it, it had already rained and kind of washed it away. So I couldn't really cast that one. I kind of kicked myself in the butt for that. But this material that I used on this track, because I've tried to cast several other tracks and it did not go my way. Mm-hmm. I used plaster of Paris at first, but that stuff it isn't worth using, because every time that I tried to get it up, it would break. And so I got a hold of this material right here. And it's pretty solid stuff. Mm-hmm. It set up in about 45 minutes to an hour. I mean, it set up quick. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give you some more of this stuff. So it does a really good job. All I need now is to get a couple more of these, and I hope some Dogman tracks and maybe a certain 3-toed critter.
Yeah. So to unpack that, let's walk that back on there. So I jumped to your most recent find here, man, because man, I was so excited, man, when I saw that picture, man. I was like, man, that was really good, man. And also in the intro, the intro of this video, all those clips you see in the intro, those are his. Now he sent those over the ones you sent me over, I put them in the intro, man, when it came across.
Oh, okay.
And then, like, so yeah, man, like, this isn't your first go around, man. This isn't the first time you've seen some, like, some stuff. So now that I've did that, man, let's go to the beginning, man. Give me your first encounter, right?
Yeah. So September 23rd, 2020, that was when I saw my first one. I was a skeptic, non-believer in these creatures, but that day it changed everything for me. So I'm gonna set the scenario. This happened in Pound, Virginia. It's pretty close to Kentucky. So a week prior to this encounter, I had worked for an auction company at that time. I'm a lineman now, but we were up there for a week, and then I was up there by myself for a week. But I was talking to the owner of the sawmill, and I asked him if, what I was needing to go where and what all he wanted to sell so we can number everything and get it ready for the auction. And he told us to keep an eye out for this quote-unquote bear. And I was like, is he a pretty good sized bear? He said, oh, yeah. And I was like, okay. He said, but there's far worse things in the mountains than that. And that stuck with me. I was like, what in the world is this old man talking about? And I jokingly thought in my head Black Panthers, because I've heard them. When I was younger, I was out with my dad helping him split firewood and put it in the wood stove, and we heard one scream, and the dad looked at me, he said, get in the house now. And I was like, okay, I'm gone. I mean, I never, like, them screams from a Black Panther, man. Yeah.
People people don't believe me when I tell them that they're down there, but they literally are. So yeah,
they are. They're everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and their screams, man. Just, oh my god, yeah. So, anyways,
spine chilling, literally. Sounds like a woman screaming. Like it's unlike anything. But so I got to work with my buddy there throughout the week, and we had the auction on Saturday. My boss came up to me, and he said, you want to stay up here another week and help people load stuff? And I was like, yeah, I can do it. He said, okay. So auction was over, got everything cleaned up, and they all left that night, and I had a hotel for the next week. So Sunday came around, and I went out there because I wasn't going to sit in a hotel all day because it was raining. I was like, I can go get some stuff done. Mm-hmm. And I went out there, I hopped on a skid steer, and I put some stuff on some pallets for whoever bought what. I just put their stuff together, and I had it organized to whenever they would come in, I could fork it up and throw it on our trailer or truck bed or whatever it may have been. And I just, I got done with that. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to walk around the wood line. So I walked around the wood line there for a second, and I looked, and I seen some footprints. Three footprints, just bang, bang, bang. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, that's a big foot. And I wear a size 12, and they were right there in the mud, and I was like, this is a Bigfoot. Like, I was jokingly like, this is a Bigfoot. Oh, and then I was like, okay, somebody's playing a prank on me. There's a hobo out here running around. I was trying to rule out everything of what it could be, not what it actually was.
Right.
So the next day, Monday, nothing happened. The next day, Tuesday, nothing happened. Wednesday, September 23rd. Oh, Lord have mercy. I don't know why that happened. Sorry.
Don't worry about that, bro. That's how we roll. That's how we get down around here, man. That's our style.
So I went out there that morning, and I was running late. I remember this distinctly. I was running late, and there was already somebody at the gate, and I was like, well, this is going to look real good on me. So I get out and unlock the first gate. It's way up on top of a hill, and I had to go down into the holler to unlock another gate. So I unlocked the first gate. He's following me down in this holler. The second gate, when we get into the sawmill there, he only had like 2 or 3 pallets. So I just hopped on the skid steer, forked them up, threw them on his trailer, and he went on about his day. And I remember distinctly, I believe I was playing Angry Birds. I know I was playing the game on my phone. And I was sitting in the skid steer in the shade, just playing my phone. And it came around 1:30, 1:45, somewhere around in that time frame. I went to go grab a Coca-Cola and a peanut butter sandwich out of my cooler. So I walked over there, opened the cooler, and I heard this growlish grunt. And I was like, well, what was that? Because I had never heard anything like that before. And then I was like, well, maybe it's a bear. And I looked over towards the wood line because this sawmill was in a holler, and there was ridges on both sides. And I was looking, and I was like, "There's nothing there." So I got to take a bite out of my sandwich.
Hold on,
and I heard
Harley,
it again, and I was like, "Well, this is weird."
Okay, there you go.
And I looked up on this cliff face, and there was something moving along in the brush, and I was like, "Okay, this is a bear." Because initially I seen that it was black and it was moving through the foliage, and I was like, "Okay, this is a bear." And I kept looking, and I looked down, I looked back up, I looked down, and I looked back up again, and it was leaning out from around the tree looking at me. I was just like, "Oh my God, this is a Bigfoot. These things are real. People aren't crazy." And it felt like it was maybe 5 minutes this thing was standing there looking at me. But it felt like an eternity. The only thing that I knew of to do was to take a picture of this thing. So I pulled my phone out. I took a picture of it, and my phone had like 70-something% battery, and it shut off. I was freaking out. I was like, "Well, how does a phone die with that much battery?" And so after we had our staring contest back and forth, it turned around and it walked up into the mountain. And I was like, "Holy crap." So I went and jumped in the truck. I plugged the phone up, hoping and praying it would come back on, and it did. And sure enough, right there was the picture. Because I wasn't going to try and get a video of this thing, because as sure as I would have, it had already been gone. But I did look up and I got the picture of this thing. And, I stayed pretty close to the truck the rest of that day. But then, at around dusk, dark, that's when they started hollering. Initially, I thought it was just the one, but after having a spectral analysis done, it is confirmed that there was more than one creature.
Okay, so real quick, so was that the audio you sent me?
Yes.
And it was the photo, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that audio and photo right in this chat, in this video right here. Now we're back.
And,
go ahead, Harley. So, yeah.
So those sounds, like, I've had people tell me it was elk, it was coyotes, it was coon dogs, anything other than what it was. And it was Bigfoot, or a big feet, however you want to say it, multiple Bigfoot, communicating back and forth. It was, I've never heard anything like these sounds, and much less seen a creature like that in my entire 20 years of living at that time.
Right. Yeah, and also too, we can rule it out, man. Like, it's definitely not an elk. It's definitely not an elk, right? It's not a mountain lion. It's not a coyote. It's definitely, I've never even seen a video like of a bear even trying to come close to making that noise. So at a minimum on this channel, man, when I talk to people, is like, okay, once we start ruling things out and we know it's something, then that something, whatever's left over, as wild as it may be, that has to be considered as an option. It's not a person either. It's definitely not a person. I've heard people try to make fake Bigfoot calls, and your recordings, man, I was listening to it. I was like, man, no. I was like, no, that's pretty good, man. That's good. So yeah. So, and plus, man, I love getting advice from people about the mountains who never go into the mountains. I love it. I love it, right?
Well, sometimes you get a little more than what you want when you go into these mountains. These mountains are so ancient. They're shrouded in mystery. We don't even know what is actually roaming out there, to be honest.
So it's funny, too. I tell people all the time, I don't know if you've heard this or not. They're about to declare the Appalachian mountain range the oldest mountain range on the planet. Did you know that?
Really?
So what they did was again, we talk about this all the time. The Appalachian Mountains run from Canada all the way down to Georgia. And about 4 or 5 weeks ago, they found caves that run from Georgia into Alabama, and I'm telling you, those caves will probably run into Louisiana. But what they're saying is that when all of our continents were together, and we were one big landmass called Pangea, and we broke apart, the Appalachian Mountains were already formed, and they just drifted away. There hasn't been any tectonic activity, any lava tubes. They were already formed, and those mountains are littered with connecting cave systems, man, that run. And
well, it's funny you mentioned that. I'm going to bring something up. So apparently there was a raptor sighting in Georgia.
Really?
Oh yeah, like like a velociraptor.
Right.
I mean,
that's right on par for 2024.
Nothing surprises me anymore.
Well, no. So it was funny too, because I just had a guest on here, Shay from out in Oklahoma, and she has pictures of what looks like a freaking pterodactyl.
Yes, photography.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Hey, Shay,
it's a pterodactyl, dude.
Yeah.
It literally looks like a pterodactyl.
Yeah, and I was like, so yeah, man. And then like, I've heard I've talked to a lot of really interesting people, man, that have some really, really interesting theories, man. And one of my favorite theories that literally, I think, can't be ignored. Are you familiar with CERN?
Oh, boy, am I ever.
Yeah,
they're in deep in Oak Ridge.
Yeah. And
nuclear facility.
So some people are saying that they keep skipping these timelines, and these timelines are bringing creatures that aren't supposed to be here back to where they were. And it's like, and I'm just like, it's crazy. But anyway, so yeah, the Appalachian Mountain Range, man, it's been a hot mess for a billion years, right? There's been giants in there. Cherokee Indians talk about the moon-eyed people, which is basically a modern day gray alien. And so,
well, I'm about to tell you something that's going to blow your mind. Apparently, there still is giant.
Yeah, I'll believe it. So, and also too, man, like people don't know it. You'll know it, but a lot of people don't know about Oak Ridge unless you're from that area and the stuff they get into. And so,
well, this is what I heard.
Yeah.
So you can take with this and take it how you want it. Apparently, CERN opened a portal in Oak Ridge, and they have people set up with 50 caliber snipers to shoot the creatures that are coming out of it, and these creatures are described as dog-headed men.
Yeah.
Dogmen.
Yeah. So yes, I've said this before, and people think I'm crazy. If we're growing dogmen in Tennessee, it would be in Oak Ridge. If they're creating lab-grown cryptids, man, it would be in freaking Oak Ridge, man.
And so, they're turned loose. They're turned loose in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park.
Yes. I have talked to, Drew. We both know Drewski, man. We talked about
Drewski.
Yeah. So he ran into some dogmen up in Mountain City. And he told me that story as well. And we recorded that.
Oh, I know a story from Mountain City, too.
Hold on. Tell me, hit it, brother. Come on, don't hold it.
So there was a episode of Dogman Encounters with Vic Cundiff that happened in Mountain City. This guy went out hiking and he set up around a campfire, and one of these dogmen came in and charged him at his campfire. But every time it got close and he pulled out his weapon, it would stop and look at his weapon and run back into the darkness to where he could barely see it. But it would go and hang out on this big rock and watch him. And he was up all night. And that next morning, after the sun came up, the creature was gone, and he went back to go get help. And he came back with like 2 or 3 other people, and they built a fire again in the exact same spot. And this night, there was 2 dogmen that came in on them, and they had guns this time.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought it was funny that you bring up Mountain City, because I need to go there. I have a guy he has experiences with the Bigfoot, so I'm trying to get up to that area. But after hearing about that episode with the 2 dogmen chasing them people, I wouldn't take it. Like these dogmen, I'm telling you, from me seeing one eye to eye firsthand as well, those things don't play around.
Yeah. So tell us about, share that. Can you share that experience with us, man?
Oh yeah. So that happened. The experience of this dogman happened January 29th. So I woke up that morning. I got a late start. I ended up leaving the house at like 2:00, and I got out there. Actually, I left at 1. I left at 1, and I got out there, and I made the decision to go somewhere else. And I was looking on the map of where I could go, and the area that I had in this area for 10 months. And the first month of doing it, I was like, I need to find new places and just scatter out. And after that experience with this Dogman happened, I only go to the one location. So I don't go to my normal area. I go to this other location, and I get out at the first trail that I could see, and I walked around and I looked, and there was some tree breaks. They were all broken off about a foot and a half off the ground, and these trees that were all broken right there in the general vicinity were made into an asterisk. Mm-hmm. And it was just laying flat on the ground. It was a huge asterisk. I mean, it was probably 20 foot long. But I don't know. I can't remember even how wide it was, but it was just a huge asterisk laying there flat on the ground. And I was like, okay, that's obvious Bigfoot sign, because Dogman was the last thing on my mind. And I go walking around in that area some more, and I find these huge rock stacks. These rocks, I don't know how much they weighed, but they were huge, and they were stacked in threes. And there is a correlation between the Bigfoot and threes. I don't know why they associate with threes, but they just do. So I was like, okay, this is an all right area. I'm not too keen on it, but these tree breaks were fresh, so I might come back here. So I left and went back to the truck, and I drove further up the mountain, and I hit this mountain trail that leads to a waterfall. And I'm hiking along, zigzagging around through there, across this first creek that had a rinky-dink bridge, and I'm zigzagging around, and I come across 2 more creeks. One of them had a bridge that went across it, and the other one had a bridge when it really didn't need a bridge because that creek was little. And I crossed that one, and I'm zigzagging around, and I go down, and I cross this creek that had a culvert. Well, the path was washed away, and it was essentially just the culvert. So I walked across the culvert, I go up, and there's a Y in the trail. The trail to the right was overgrown and not maintained by the Park Services. I was like, you know what? I'm going up the mountain. And I take that left, and I go up the trail, and I see this game trail that runs across. And I'm like, okay. So I hit the game trail, and I go right. And I'm looking, and there's these twist breaks. Now, for those who don't know what a twist break is, that's the sign that the Sasquatch do, where it takes something with hands to twist a tree, and you can see the fibers playing out of it. It's a significant sign that they do. And the way to tell is, honestly, if you look around for any of the other trees and they're not broken like that, it's most likely it's the Sasquatch and not the wind. And for these, there was 2. The first one, the one that was lower down, the one that was higher up the mountain, it was 8.5 feet off the ground. It was twisted and broken. The other one, it was at least 12 feet off the ground. It was twisted and broken facing down. So the other one was twisted and broke facing up. The other one was twisted and broke facing down. There was no other trees in that area that were broke and twisted like that. It was just those 2. And I was like, okay, I guess this is a sign to go up the mountain. And as I was walking around in that area, I had found some smaller stick structures that I believe that the juvenile had made, because they were smaller sticks, and they were just intertwined and just mangled together like with intent. So I get back to the main trail, and I'm going up. I come across the knoll, and the trail goes to the right a little bit, and it makes 2 curves. I come to the first curve, and before I get into the first curve, I remembered that I sent my wife my location over the satellite, because I did not tell her that I was going to a new location. And I had like 34% battery. And I go around the curve, and I check the phone again. It says 10% battery, and it shut off. Well, by the time that I had sent her my location over satellite, it had started to snow, and it was getting colder. I packed light. I just had on a hoodie, my jeans, and my mutt boots. I didn't even have a toboggan on. I just had a hat. So I was starting to get cold, and I was like, well, I got a decision to make after that phone shut off. I was like, I can go up a little bit further. I can turn around. So I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm not getting froze to death out here. So I turned around, and I came back around the curve, And it wasn't 20 yards after coming around the curve and the straightaway, I heard something behind me to my right moving. And I was like, okay, this is probably a Bigfoot because of the signs that I'm finding. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to turn and it's going to be there. So I stopped on a dime and I turned and I locked eyes on it. This huge dark brown wolf with the brightest yellow eyes of anything I've ever seen. Wow. It was laying flat on the ground. Just dead flat. I couldn't really see its arms or nothing. I could just see the head and the body outline from the shoulders. And it was just laying flat on the ground. I was like, okay, this is not, as I was like, this is something that is not good. I was like, this is something that could take me out with ease. So this thing pushes itself up with its forearms to a bipedal position. And it takes 3 steps, and it's right there, not even 15 yards away from me. And it has one of its hands propped up on the tree. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen a raccoon's hands up close, but these Dogmen, their hands are like a large raccoon hand. It is unbelievable. The claws are huge. So this is I can describe this thing down to a T. The top of its head, in between its ears, was kind of flat. It had huge ears like a German Shepherd. The eyes were just so bright and yellow, like they were just self-illuminating in a sense. Its nose was snudged into its snout. It had a mane running down the back of its neck. I don't know how far down the back it went, but I could tell that there was a mane essentially there. It had a big poofy tail like a fox's. But the biggest distinction of this thing to me was the legs. This thing didn't have backwards facing legs like most accounts that you hear of Dogman. This thing had forward facing legs like a human. Now I don't know if it was a werewolf but I'm tending leaning to some kind of Dogman hybrid that the government powers that be has cooked up, I think. This thing locks eyes. It's growling and snarling. And I'm in fear, and like there's a difference when you look into the eyes of a Bigfoot. There's a humanness to it. Essentially, there's something human about it. But when you look into the eyes of one of these Dogmen, it's not a very, very good feeling. My life was flashing before my eyes. My wife was going to move on, be a widow without me. The kids were going to grow up without a dad, and just everything was just happening, and not being around for grandkids, everything was just flashing so fast. And I was like, I gotta run. And I start back stepping, and this thing is still growling and snarling, and it's like, it literally has one of its arms propped up on the tree, and it's like playfully like grabbing at me. And I'm like, I just backpedaled as much as I could, and then I just turned and I bolted. And I heard it behind me, and it was chasing me, but it wasn't in the trail. It was staying in the woods. Now, how in the world I didn't fall, it was just an act of God this whole time. I mean, I've never moved so fast in all my life. I mean, I was moving like a track star. I never did track, but I feel like if I did, I feel like I'd been pretty good at it. But then I get down to the bottom where the culvert was, and I see the brush, and I kind of glanced over my shoulder, and I could see the brush and the foliage moving, and as it was coming through there, and I could very briefly see an outline of it. And I go up the hill, and I come back down, and I cross the third creek, and I'm kind of just looking at when I can, and I can see the brush and foliage moving that this thing's still chasing me. When I get to the second bridge, and I come across it, and I kind of glance over and look, and I think that was when it stopped, because I didn't see the brush or foliage move, but I'm pretty sure but I don't know, because I know that I was still hauling butt to get out of there. And it was just unbelievable.
Yeah, man, I can tell your heart rate's up right now, bro. Yeah, man, are you good?
It's nightmare fuel, man.
Yeah, are you all right?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's tough to talk about, man, because this thing could have killed me.
Yeah.
But so I want to talk. So this is how I met my friends Rick and Steven. They called me up because I had posted about my encounter and with this Dogman, and they were a part of the North American Dogman Project. and they came down and met with me. It was February 2nd. So the same week that this encounter happened, I was right back up there. But I had my head on swivel, man. Like, I was not taking any chances. I was looking at it. I was like, you know what? If this thing shows back up again, I'm out. Like, I'm gone. So we get to the exact spot where this thing was laying. It was 28 feet from where it was laying to the tree. And it took that in 3 steps. That's an 8.5 foot stride.
Yeah. For sure, yeah.
So there was where it had its hand up on the tree, there were some scratch marks. And I could remember distinctly where the top of its head was, not including the ears. So it was 8 feet tall, not including its ears. So its ears probably would have added another 6 inches at least.
Yeah.
It was almost 4 foot at the shoulders. It was like 46 inches, I think. Like, it was a couple inches. I know it was a couple inches shy of 4 foot. And this is its head, the sheer size of this thing's head. Well, this track's 15 inches. The thing's head was 17 inches across.
Wow.
So for scale a little bit, this Dogman's head was a couple inches longer than this track. So I mean, it was a huge head. It's still kind of hard to think about, you know, that the Dogmen are actually out there, and it's pure nightmare fuel, man. These creatures, you know, they're not entirely flesh and blood. Oh yeah, and I forgot to throw this in there. So the spot where it was laying, we had a compass with us. The compass was spinning. So I don't know if it was a portal or what, but there was something about that area that had the compass going haywire.
That's a good point, man. Yeah, for sure. So like, I've talked to several people, man, and they've given me their like, I know a couple people that just drill this Dogman down to the bones, and they were telling me that there's several different types of Dogmen. You have the Dogmen that but they use the word phase, right? So just for conversation purposes, we'll use the ones that'll phase. You have a Dogman that can phase. A werewolf, they're saying, has a condition called lycanthropy, right, where it cannot control when it phases, but but they feel it coming on, and they'll chain themselves up, is what this guy was telling me. Now, a Dogman, he said, a Dogman can phase at will when he wants to phase, and when he can control it. And he was saying that their height is always around 6 feet. He says 6 feet, maybe 6'1". You don't ever, the ones that can phase, right? They're not the 9-footers or the 10-footers or the 12-footers. He says the ones that are that big, he says those are the lab-grown ones that are permanently in a locked state of being like a Dogman. And I was like, so, and then I don't know if you're familiar. Have you ever heard of the Joe Barger incident up in
yes.
Michigan? So the
asset.
Yeah. So, and that was a 12-foot one. So the one you're describing was at least 8 feet, right? And so that's what.
Well, it was 8 feet. 8 feet to the T, right without the ear. 8 foot, not including the ears.
Yeah. So he was telling me that you know that leads into like the super soldier programs from World War II that they were going into. But he says the ones that you come across that are bigger than 6 feet. He's telling me those are the lab grown full ones that are locked, and those are the ones that they let out to go into the caves on purpose. And it wouldn't surprise me that from how you just described your incident, if he wanted you, he would have had you. Right.
Exactly.
So and that's the thing where he was basically he was pacing you for funsies, right down.
What I think was that I stumbled across probably a den with pups in it is what I think ultimately. But come to find out, I looked on the map, and where I seen it at, where it was laying, there was 2 old cemeteries. Like, there wasn't no gravestones, no fences or nothing, but there's 2 old cemeteries right there in the area.
Yeah, man.
And there is a connection between the the cryptids, paranormal, and these cemeteries.
No, there is. Me and Drew and I were talking about a lot of people who don't grow up in that East Tennessee mountain range, especially from the tip from Georgia up to Virginia, North Carolina, that mountain range. You can just be walking along in the woods and you'll just find a grave that like something is just buried there, right? Like from who knows. And I tell people like that's probably 400 years old and that's where he died. You know, they buried him on the trail and so also I talked to some people too that had some interesting theories about I'm going to get your opinion on it here in a second on the Bigfoot like orb phenomenon, the orbs. I've talked about it a lot, man, and about how, especially when you get out towards the West Coast, up in Washington and Alaska, and that part of Canada, you see a lot of paddy class Bigfoots, and people say they see orbs prior, during, after, or whatever, right? And so it led me to believe. So this book back I read over here, I plug this almost every show, man. It's a great book. It's called the 54 Apocrypha, man. It was the books that were actually taken out of the Bible, except the Ethiopian Bible, which is still in the Ethiopian Bible. So the Ethiopian Bible is 600 years older than the King James Bible. It is it is the most accurate Bible, right? But those were the stories that were taken out of the Bible. And in
that makes you wonder why they were taken out.
Yeah, well, I know why. So the Catholic Church says it gave away too much information, especially the book of Enoch, right? And in the book of Enoch, it talks about the Watchers that comes down, and it's a specific chapter in there within the book of Enoch called the Book of Giants, where it says that the Watchers sinned against all manner of creature, which basically they conducted animal-human hybrids. Yeah,
the Nephilim.
Yep. Yeah. And they created the Fae, right? They created all the fairy tale stuff that you hear about. Yeah. And people, the Sumerian tablets say the same thing. It just sounds like it's an alien invasion movie.
Yeah.
And so when I talk to people and I ask them, I try to get it. I ask them, you know, a Bigfoot, if it wanted to do you, you're going to get done. You know what I'm saying? Like you couldn't stop it, right? Like there's no way. It's like, so 8 feet tall, 10 feet tall, 12 feet tall, 14 feet tall.
800 to 1,000 pounds full grown.
Yeah. I'm 6 feet tall, man. And I've heard Bigfoots having 6 foot wide shoulders. I stand no chance. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I'm 6'6", so they probably think I'm one of them, honestly.
Right.
Well, I did find out that I do have Rh negative blood.
Well, there you go. So that's probably why you see them so much.
15% of the population has that. I'm just like, wow, I have that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Nephilim bloodlines.
Yeah, for sure. But you've been around these creatures. You know, if they wanted to end you, you couldn't stop them. You know what I'm saying?
No, Lord, no, I couldn't.
Yeah, and so so that's the thing that, like, Bigfoots, like you said, there's a certain type of benevolence about them, like a protector for them. They watchers. For the most part, they just want to be left alone, right? They don't want to come down. Yeah, every now and then you'll hear a story where they're eating dogs or they're doing something, man. But like,
right
around about. So Harley, man, I want to get your opinion, man. And I've talked to people that said no, they're 100% spiritual. No, they're 100%, you know, a Gigantopithecus or something, you know, just a remnant on there, right? So right.
Gigantopithecus.
Yeah, man. So like 100%, man. Like something like no, this is it, man. But like I'm with you, man. I think they are much more complicated, and I think they are 10 times smarter than we are, man. So
I used to think that they were Gigantopithecus before I started doing my research.
Right.
And whenever I had my second experience with one, when I looked into its eyes, I could tell there was a humanness to it in some way, shape, or form. And right after that, I went looking into the Bible for answers, you know, and I found that Cain was cursed to be a restless wanderer of the earth. And I was like, well, that could explain it. But then I was like, you know, there's the orb phenomenon and all that stuff. Well, then I looked at Esau too, you know, he was born with covered in red hair, and, you know, it fit the lines a little bit. And I was like, well, there's still the paranormal aspect of everything going on. And then, you know, I looked into the Nephilim. the fallen angels procreated with human women and created the Nephilim. And, they didn't just procreate with human women, they procreated with animals as well, and even plants, to my knowledge. And this is where I'm about to blow your mind. I don't know if you've heard this term or not yet, but I hope I blow your mind right here. So there's a buddy of mine named Bo Kennedy. He has the Bump podcast. He called me up. He actually told me when I was a guest on her, he knew a woman that had a relationship with a Bigfoot.
What?
This Bigfoot would come and visit her. Not like that, like a friendship relationship.
What?
And it would come and visit her in a physical form as a Bigfoot, and it would come visit her in an orb form.
I've heard that story.
It communicates.
No, not that. I met that woman.
Oh.
I met her. The guy I'm going to introduce you to knows that woman. So yeah, go ahead, tell that story. I met her.
So this Bigfoot communicated with this woman telepathically. It told her that it was a Eliud, and the Eliud are the children of the Nephilim.
Yep. I met her at my very first Bigfoot conference up in Pennsylvania this year. And and I actually heard her speak. I heard her speak, and she was telling that story on it. That's crazy, man. No, but also too, when I did that, I did the story. I covered a story about a First Nation. Seraphim Long was her name. A First Nation Indian in the western part of Canada in like the 1800s. And these Bigfoots a Bigfoot kidnapped her and got her pregnant. But she was describing it, but the way she described it to me, from knowing what I know now, that it sounded more like a wild man than actually like a Bigfoot, right? Like it wasn't a Patty class Bigfoot, but it sounded more like a wild man when she was telling like this story, right? But so
it makes you wonder if feral people, that could be a likely possibility.
Yeah.
And with all this gene manipulation and all the technology that's out there, who's to say that the fallen angels aren't helping with achieve this technology and all this stuff?
Oh yeah, no, because
apparently they're supposed to be chained up, but. So, and then all this talk of Nephilim still being underground and all this. There's threads
to be pulled there. Like, so we 100% know. So when I have conversations with people, we know some Nephilim survived the flood because David killed Goliath. But if you go ahead and you keep reading that story, other people killed Goliath's brothers. He had like 2 or 3 brothers. He wasn't just like a one-off, right? Mm-hmm. And I've also heard stories too about. I'm trying to word this in a decent way. That a lot of them were driven underground, and then when you look into like Dulce secret bases out in New Mexico and stuff like that, and what's going on under the Denver International Airport and stuff like that. And when you start reading Native American legends about how this was after the flood, y'all, where they fought these giants, red-haired giants, 6 fingers. I mean, they were fighting Nephilims, man. Yep. And so we know that some of them, got away.
Yeah.
And we also too, if you listen to the Native American tales, they will tell you that how incredibly smart these creatures are. Right. And so.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They're a lot smarter than we are.
Yeah. And so there's definitely some type of fiduciary going on. But yeah, man. So you with the Bigfoot thing, you're leaning now more towards it's more like a hard to put in a single box, right?
Yeah. It's spiritual warfare, to say the least.
Yeah.
It's essentially what it is. It's coming down to it. I mean, these things. What I tell people is these things are on a leash. You stay on the sidewalk, they're like dogs trying to come at you on the chain.
Yeah,
they can't get you if you stay on the sidewalk. But when you step off the sidewalk, they can't get you. But there was another kicker that I forgot to tell you from that initial Dogman encounter. Now, I don't know what triggered this, but I didn't normally pray before I went into the woods. But I remember distinctly before I had got off the trail, I prayed before I went in the woods, and before I had that Dogman encounter. That struck me deep right there. I was like, God's got my back.
Yeah.
Like he protected me from that thing essentially. Because if it really wanted to, it could have got me. But it's almost like, why did it stop there? Of like all places, it could have kept chasing me if it wanted to make sure I was gone, but it stopped.
Yeah.
So it's like when I always tell people to stay prayed up, because like I said, all of this is spiritual, and these things know who Jesus is, and they flee in His name. There's power in the name and in the blood. These things know their place.
Yeah. No, I've heard, and like I can bring you receipts on that too, man. Like I've had conversations on this channel before, talking. They're not, and I'll say this, and I won't even be embarrassed. They're not allowed to touch us unless we like give them like some type of like opening to do so. I've heard so many stories about people. I will say so many. I've heard at least 4. That's a lot. That's when we're talking about Dogmen. That's a lot in Dogmen years, right? So I've heard at least 4 stories about people saying that they were camping, they were somewhere, and they looked out their window, and there was these creatures out there. The creatures jumped onto the roof, walked around the house, scratched the windows, clicked the doors, and basically terrorized them all night, but never went into the house, right? Never went into the house, right? And so there is, we're all just trying to piece this puzzle together. And again, like I say, at a very minimum, right? Something is going on. If you can't agree that something is going on, then go like we're not the channel for you, man. Go down 2 doors and collect Pokemons or do something, right?
Well, or go out there and find out for yourself, or end up on an issue 411.
Yeah, exactly. Go out there and find out for yourself, right? But there's something going on, man, and I actually firmly believe this is that we somehow, well, no, it was not somehow, it was done to us on purpose, man, probably through like the Rothschilds way back in the day. Our ability to connect to our spirituality and to be in tune has been taken away from us. And I know they dumb us down and there's all this other stuff going on, but
it's a narrative.
Yeah, there's something that we have the ability to do that we no longer know that we have the ability to do, and we don't quite know how to, turn that on. People talk about, raise your vibrations. That's stupid. What does that even mean? Raise my vibration.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. If I sit in my bedroom.
Ultimately, I think what it is that we could normally see these things through the veil. And now we can't. And now, whenever you're taking pictures and all this stuff, and you start getting faces and creatures in there, it's almost like, hey, you should be able to see this with the naked eye. Why is the camera picking it up?
That is actually, Harley, that's a great way to say that, man. That's exactly what I was trying to articulate, man. Once upon a time, man, we could probably see everything. You know what I'm saying? Everything. And then somehow, I don't know if it's the fluoride or I don't know if it's why, I don't know what it is, man, but somehow along the way, man, we've been blinded, man, or we've been like putting down and stuff. And so
they want us to keep the world as they want us to see it. They want us to see the world as they want us to see it, not as it's bigger than what it actually is, and there's more stuff happening.
Oh, yeah, believe. So like I said, man, I had a great, I actually feel bad for this person, man. And that's rare for me. I had a conversation literally 4 days ago. I was talking to this guy, man. And he was talking, he follows my show. He'll watch this episode for sure. And he was just like, hey, man, I don't know. He's like, I get up, I go to work, I come home, I eat, I watch TV, I go to sleep. And I'm like, yo, man, we live in a world, bro, that like this world that we live in, man, is insane. And so it's like, you are missing out on he's like, yeah, man, your show is the closest thing that I ever get to it. I'm like, yo, and that's exactly what you're talking about. Everything that we've ever heard, bro, is real. Like there is a truth to it somewhere along the lines, man, that's been taken. That's like, and I feel like we've been robbed that birthright, I would say, from, or that
yeah, absolutely.
heritage.
That's it. Yeah, birthright. Yeah.
It's been taken away from us, man. And so like, yeah, no. Yeah, man, that's good stuff, bro. That's good stuff, man. No, it's good. Hey, so look, like I tell everybody, bro, now I got my hooks in you. You're mine now. You know what I'm saying? So look, so now
we're buddies now.
So yeah, so now I got my hooks in you now.
So all we do now is get you in the woods.
Yeah, no, for sure. So like I said, man, I'm working on this project, man. I'm actually probably going to pull you in on it, man. It's specifically about the Smoky Mountains. And so I'm in Northern Virginia right now. So I spend a lot of time in the Shenandoahs, right?
Okay.
And so you're a lot of time down there in the Smokies or the Grandfather Mountains or whatever in that area down there. But no, man. So yeah, we'll definitely hook up and do some projects. So hey, real quick, Harley, man, tell everybody where they can find you, man. I know, what are your channels, man?
Yeah, I have a Facebook group, Bigfoot Reports and Data. I have almost 5,500 members in there now. You can find me on Instagram, Bigfoot Reports and Data. That's also my YouTube channel as well. I can give the links to Joe so he can put those in the bio. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and God bless each and every one of y'all, and stay prayed up, and and I encourage everybody, whether you're a non-believer or believer, keep an open mind that there is more to these creatures that meets the eye, and I just encourage people, if you're a skeptic, coming from a former skeptic, don't be skeptic.
Yeah, go in the woods, find out. So, man, good job. All that stuff, all that information will be in the bio. I follow Harley on all of his platforms. So click on my links and you can see who I'm following, and then you can follow him. So, you know how we do it around here, nerds. If you stuck around this long, you're our type of loser. So look, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment about your Bigfoot experience. If you want a Bigfoot experience, if you want to go into it or whatever, this guy is a seasoned tracker. He can get you in, and a 50% chance you come out alive. He's coming out alive, right? So like 50 chance that you'll come out alive. And then we'll send Drew in there to find you, or to find us.
Unless people have visions and premonitions of you being attacked and killed by a dogman, then your odds are normally pretty good. I'm playing low out of the woods for a couple of days.
Exactly. So anyways, hold on one second. So anyways, that's all you get for $1, nerds. We're out.
Subscribe now and turn on the notifications to join us on this extraordinary journey into the unknown.